All right. Our speaker tonight is Savannah Reed, who's a very active member of AWG. She's our Pacific Northwest Chapter's Communications Committee Chair. So she's in charge of all of our social media. And she's also a member of the AWG Board of Directors. She holds a bachelor's in geology from Old Dominion University. And to be honest, I'm not sure where that is. And a master's from Mississippi State University. She works as a hydrogeologist at the Department of Ecology, Washington State Department of Ecology, and also teaches as an adjunct professor at Trine University and Centralia College, and focuses on undergraduate earth science and geology courses. So go ahead and share your screen, Savannah.
Perfect. Right. Okay, is everyone, you can see that okay?
Yes, it looks nice.
Okay. All right, perfect. All right. So thank you so much for hopping in today. And I want to say thank you to Marcia and Mindy for asking me to do this presentation. I am Savannah Reed. Like Marcia said, I'm a member of AWG, the Pacific Northwest Chapter Communications Chair. And I also serve as the North Central Region alternate delegate. Today, I'm talking about establishing yourself as an early career geoscientist. I graduated from grad school just over a year ago. So this advice is solely based off of my experience and what has helped me. So I'm hoping that it can help other students or recent graduates feel a little bit more confident jumping into your career. The things I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to do a brief introduction about me and then talk about your public appearance, finding and applying for jobs, grasping opportunities, networking, and resiliency. I know Marcia gave my background, but I do have a BS in Ocean Earth Science, Geology from Old Dominion University, which is in Norfolk, Virginia, and an MS in Environmental Geoscience from Mississippi State University. I do work at the Washington State Department of Ecology as a hydrogeologist in the groundwater monitoring unit. In that position, I help support taking groundwater levels across the state and supporting other hydrogeologists as they do groundwater testing for chemicals and toxins. And I also teach at Trine University and Centralia College, earth science courses mainly, but I've also developed some other courses like biology and other science courses. And I moved to Washington just over a year ago with my wife. She's stationed at JBLM, and so we live in Lacey. All right, so jumping right into it, the first thing I'm going to talk about is your public appearance. And when I talk about this, I'm not talking about how you dress or look, but rather how you present yourself to the professional world. And one big thing I want to talk about with this is LinkedIn. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile, you should get one. It's kind of like this amazing professional social media almost. And it's a great way to connect with other people in the professional world. It's super important to make sure that you have updated information on your profile, especially your life events like jobs and your education, as well as any fieldwork and projects that you work on. And also to be personable. You should include, pictures of yourself in the field or at conferences with other people. You do want to seem professional, but you also want to seem like you're a person. And you almost want to sell yourself. You want to highlight your experiences and skills that are going to make you stand out and stand apart from other people, because you never know when a potential employer is going to look at your profile on LinkedIn, especially if you're including your LinkedIn URL on your resumes, which I do. So you should present yourself as someone who is personable and wants to take part in different conferences and fieldwork whenever those opportunities present themselves. But you also want to make sure that you're professional. A big point here is following people and organizations that you're involved in, and also those goal organizations, those organizations that you want to be involved in, or maybe that organization you want to work for one day in the future. You never know when an organization may post a job or an internship or some opportunity that could be perfect for you, and that could be your key to opening that door into that organization. And definitely share posts about things that you do. If you go to a conference or if you're going to a conference, go ahead and share that on there. For example, you could post you're going, and there could be someone else who also is going to that conference and could comment on it, and you guys could meet up in person. You could, now you have a personal and a professional connection, and connections are one of the most important things, if not the most important thing, when establishing yourself early in your career. The second thing I'm going to talk about is finding jobs. And this can be really tough. I'm not going to lie to anyone. Job hunting is not easy by any means, but there are some ways that you can make it a little bit easier or more effective. The biggest question when finding jobs is, well, where do I look? How do I start? And here on the slide, you can see a picture that has a bunch of job search engines. Some of them you probably recognize, like LinkedIn or Indeed, Glassdoor, and there's many, many more. And they are all great sites for jobs. However, my number one rule that I always do is to go to the organization or company website. And I'm going to tell you why. Typically, applications go through some sort of third-party service when it's through Indeed or Glassdoor. They just get scanned by a computer. And so it's probably not an actual person who is viewing your application, and it may not actually get sent to the employer. I was a manager at a restaurant many years ago, and they would post jobs on Indeed, and I would never see those applications unless I went in and logged in and searched through them myself. So it's not very efficient. Sometimes job listings can also be old or not available. The job you're applying for, it may have been filled already, and you could be applying for something that's not even open. So you're wasting your time by putting time and energy into an application, because we all know applications, they can take a long time to fill out. There's questions, you got to enter all your education and your work experience and your references. So you could be wasting a lot of time applying for a job that might not even be available anymore. Companies themselves have human resource departments, and part of their job is to go through applications and to review them. And they may see a potential in you and in your in the things that you've done that a third-party scanning service may not see. For example, for me, when I first got into the geoscience field, I didn't have a lot of experience. I went to college during COVID, so I didn't get a lot of field work because everything went online. I did my master's program online, and I had never worked in a geoscience position before. And so I had a really hard time finding jobs. But my manager, who gave me my first opportunity, said that there were things that stood out to him as good qualities in an employee. I had worked in a pharmacy all through college, and so he took my pharmacy experience as me being very detail-oriented. The fact that I made medications that were life or death for some people, he took that as, oh, she'll pay attention to the details and she'll make sure she does the job right the first time. And that may not have been picked up by a computer. That may have just been looked over like, oh, you have no experience, you're not qualified. But those HR employees or even the managers reviewing the applications, they may see that potential in you. So always go to the company website. It's a more direct way to ensure your application is going to go to a hiring manager and doesn't get stuck in like a third-party limbo. Also, you may go to a company website and find 5 or more applications that you want to put in. Oftentimes on search engines, it may show you a few of the jobs that are open, but you could go to the actual company website and find multiple that you may qualify for that you want to apply. So, and you kind of get more bang for your buck when you go to the company website. The second point I want to make about finding jobs is to reach out to your connections. Let people know that you're open for employment, and ask them to reach out to you if they have anything that becomes available you may be a good fit for. early in your career, you may not have as many connections immediately, and that's okay. But just as you connect with people more, to keep that in the back of your mind that this person may be an opportunity to get into a field you want to get into. If you connect with someone down the road who works for EPA or USGS or whatever your goal organization may be, it's good to keep that connection, because you may be able to reach out to them down the road and say, hey, I'm looking for a new opportunity. Let me know if you have something that comes available that you may think would be good for me. So finding jobs is one thing, but actually applying them is the real deal. And when doing this, it's super important to make sure you have your resume and cover letter. Those are kind of 101. Most people know that. But I want to dig a little bit more into the details of your resume and your cover letter. First thing with this is it should be accurate. Again, like your LinkedIn profile should have accurate information, especially your contact information. You want to list a phone number and an email that you can actually be reached at. You don't want someone to contact you for a job and then you don't get that email and you never get back to them, because that's an opportunity lost. And one thing I want to throw in there is have a professional email. I know some of us may have made an email years ago and it could be something really, really funny. But it's probably good practice to have an email that's more professional, something like your name, and nothing too complicated, something that is clean and appropriate. Your resume and cover letter themselves should also be professional. Use professional language, don't use text language. And make sure that it's organized in a way that's easy to understand and easy to follow. You don't want to have things in multiple different places. You don't want to make it difficult for someone to read through your resume. And you can add color or something that kind of shows your personality, but just remember to keep it professional and clean. Make sure you include information such as your education, your work experience, certifications you may have, skill sets that make you a valuable employee, and always include organizations that you're in. And if you've held any leadership roles, you can also add field work you've done, or if you've received any awards or done any presentations. You can see my cover letter and resume, or that's my resume on the right-hand side. So that's kind of an example, but I'm definitely not a professional. Also, it's really important to have multiple versions of your resume and cover letter, because it depends on what you're applying for, right? Like you may want to take out some less applicable details for a certain job position. For example, if I'm applying for a geoscience field-based job, I'm going to want to include field work. I may not include my teaching experience, or maybe the learning management systems or the certifications and courses I've developed, because that might not be applicable to the job I'm applying for. And vice versa, if I'm applying for a teaching job, my cover letter is going to look very different than a field-based job, because I'm trying to sell myself as an educator. It's good to mention, yes, I've done field work, I've done the hands-on stuff, but I want you to know that I've developed courses. I want you to know that I know how to work with different learning management systems and that I've done these certifications. So you want to have multiple different versions depending on what you're applying for. And you want to use keywords in your resume and in your cover letter, depending on the application. There's very specific, these are the things you're going to do in this position. You want to include words that connect into the application that you're applying for, because it not only shows that you read the entire application, but it can also highlight that this person is a really good fit for this job because they have done the things that we're looking for. And the last thing I want to say when applying for jobs, and this can be applied to scholarships too. I'm speaking about jobs mostly, but these can also apply to scholarships. You want to tune it to whatever it is that you're applying for. The last thing that I'm going to mention with this is follow up with hiring managers. It can be really good to show that you're interested in a position and open to opportunities, but I will definitely say be careful doing this. Hiring managers likely have a lot of work going on as well as applications, so you don't want to overburden them and you don't want to bug them per se. So you don't want to follow up 10 different times. Follow up once and give it some time between applying and following up. It can take a couple weeks, if not a month or more, to get your application looked at. So it is professional and it is good to follow up, but don't overwhelm a hiring manager. The next thing I want to talk about is grasping opportunities, because I am a firm believer that you have to go out after what it is that you want. And you have to think of everything as having potential. You can grow yourself professionally and personally by looking for opportunities around you. The first thing with this is to join organizations. I listed a few. There's so many in the geoscience world. These are just a few, but most of the time, organizations will have a student or an early career membership that is discounted. And that early career membership is sometimes the requirements are that you graduated like less than 5 years ago or something. So you can use that membership for quite a long time. And you should take advantage of those discounts and join those organizations. They not only look good on a resume, but they're also a great way to network with other people in the geoscience field. And you can put yourself out there and look for opportunities within those organizations by volunteering. For example, with me, after I joined AWG, I volunteered to serve as a delegate on the board of directors. And then I also volunteered for the communications chair with the Pacific Northwest chapter. Since then, I've also been asked to take the lead on the Earth Science Week project that AWG does in conjunction with AGU. And I've also helped work on the national communications side. And I created our Discord channel. If you're in AWG and you're in the Discord, I created that. These opportunities have been really amazing for me. They've allowed me not only to connect with a number of amazing women in the field, but it's also put my name on the radar as somebody who's willing to volunteer and help out, which looks good both personally and professionally for me. Lastly, reach out for fieldwork positions, even if they're unpaid. Now, this definitely won't be doable for everybody, and I totally get that. You have bills to pay. You can't always do an unpaid position, but if you can squeeze an opportunity, go ahead and take it. Again, with another example of my life, when I first moved to Washington, I connected with a professor at the University of Washington, Tacoma. She invited me for coffee just to kind of chat about my career and education goals, and because she knows a lot of people. And since then, we've become friends, and she invited me to be a judge at the UW Tacoma Science Symposium. And I'm also doing some volunteer field work with her starting next week. And it happens to work perfectly with my work schedule. I'm off Mondays, so field work is from 9 to 3 on Mondays. So it's on my day off, so I have the time. And even though it's unpaid, that is such a big accomplishment for me as someone who went to school during COVID and doesn't have that field experience as much as I want it. So it's a great way to make up for any opportunities that I could have lost. And it's going to look really great on my resume. It's going to be a great learning experience. I'm also going to get to help teach some of the undergrads, and it keeps a great connection with her, which can be really beneficial in the future. And when I talk about this, I share my stories because I want to show you that it is doable if you put yourself out there. I grew up a military kid, and I am a military spouse, so I'm no stranger to starting over in a new place. And if there's one thing that I've learned, it's that connections are so, so important, and you have to network yourself all the time. So with networking, I've said, again, you're probably going to get tired of me saying it, is that connections are so important. But I really want to emphasize to connect whenever you can. You can connect on social media. You can do more personal ones like Facebook or Instagram where appropriate. You know, I wouldn't advise that you just go and add your bosses, but if you make friends with people in the field, network with them on social media, connect with them. You can also stay connected in organizations like AWG, etc., and even alumni associations. You never know. Alumni end up all around the world, especially when you go to a university that has a big national involvement. You can somehow run into someone who also went to your school, or you could connect with someone who was a geology student 5 years before you and may have a job opportunity. But you walk up to that person and you're like, yeah, I went to ODU. They're like, so did I. That's an immediate connection. You don't even have to try. You're now connected because you can now talk about the things you did in college and the traditions, you're connected by something deeper. And that's the same with organizations. So try to take advantage of any opportunity around you that can connect with other people. Attend conventions and conferences if you can. I know sometimes they can be expensive, but if you have the opportunity to do so, go for it and come prepared to connect and market yourself. You can come with business cards or QR codes to your LinkedIn, or I think they have business cards that someone can just tap on your phone and it gives you all their information. Whatever works for you, but come ready to talk to people, to meet people, because those connections, that can be your door to that position you want, that opportunity you want. So take advantage of it, and don't be afraid to reach out to people. It can be scary to put yourself out there, but the more you do it, the more it starts to feel normal and the more comfortable you are. And so resiliency. This is a big one for me because it can be really hard to jump into the post-school world. You're faced with finding a job to make school worth it, and it's a competitive field, and it's really scary, but hang in there because it is okay to be scared and it is okay to be stressed, but you just have to give it a little time. It took me months before I even got an entry-level position at the Department of Ecology, not even the position I'm in now, but it took me months after graduation to get an entry-level position. But that entry-level position gave me the opportunity to apply internally to a better position, and I was able to land this awesome position that I have now, and I'm super, super grateful for that. But I definitely had my fair share of like tears and stress because I was like, I can't find anything and I don't have experience and it's hard. And it's totally valid to feel that way. But stay resilient. Opportunities do not come overnight, but keep applying and keep trying, trust the process, and keep reaching out to people. And the biggest thing I want to say with resiliency is that once you get that job and get to where you want to be, share your tips and tricks for others. Like I'm doing now, I'm, very new to the professional world, but I want to share the things I have learned in hopes that it can help you, or it can help someone that you talk to. So when you get to that point that you want to be, share that those tips and tricks with other people. And so if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And if you would like to connect with me, if I haven't said the word connect enough today, my LinkedIn is just my name, Savannah Reed, and my email is there as well. But you can also find me through all of the AWG social medias as well. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And thank you again for joining today and listening.
All right. Well, thank you, Savannah. Does anyone have any questions or comments about it? About her talk?
Hey, Savannah, I have a question.
Sure.
So I had a faculty member at my university recently tell me that he thought it was important on the resume to include a contact information and address for every place that I've worked, including for my supervisors that I've had in the past. Well, I prior military, and so that's kind of difficult to put something like that on a resume, like who is my supervisor and his contact information from 20 years ago. And then also, one of the companies I worked for is now closed. So when it comes to how important do you think it is to have those kinds of details on a resume when I personally don't see the value in it, but the potential employer doesn't know why I'm not putting it on there? Do you think I should make something, like pull something out of thin air that I know isn't going to work for them and just put it on there anyway?
I personally don't put like manager contact information on my resume. I have found that most of the time, if you apply for a job, sometimes it will ask for like a supervisor name and a supervisor phone number at that point. And if it's required, I have pulled it up, but I've had the same issues where like I worked at that place like 7 years ago, and I actually, one of my past jobs, that location has now closed. So I'm like, you can call that number. It's not going to go anywhere. But I definitely, I mean, this is just my opinion. I think that managers typically reach out to your references more so than past jobs. At least from what I've heard, like in the position I'm in now, I know that they called my references, but I have not specifically heard of any of them calling or, trying to reach out to a prior place of employment, especially if it's a long time ago. So I personally, I don't put them on my resume. I just include the name of where it was and then the city it was located in and when I worked there. And if someone does ask me, hey, what's the contact information? I would just explain if that place is now closed down.
Thank you.
When I was years ago looking for work, I had places that actually fairly quickly had closed down on my resume. And so I only kept, included like the last two or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, on mine, I'd have to look, but I'm pretty sure I've only included my current job and the one right before I worked for Ecology because I mean, like I said, this is my first job in the geoscience field. So my previous job as a pharmacy technician, I think there are some skills in there that are applicable um, to me as an employee. But me including my manager experience at a restaurant that I worked at 4 or 5 years ago, it doesn't seem relevant enough to include. I know some people, they say it's good practice not to include anything over like 4 or 5 years. But I think it depends on, well, what was your work experience like? Did you have a large gap in employment because you were dealing with family things or whatever the case may be? Were you in the military? Because that happens too. I've created a resume for my wife and she's like, well, the military is all I've got, So it's like, I personally don't include it if I don't think it's relevant. I'd rather sell myself, and what I do have rather than unimportant things that may not really apply to the job. But resume building can be really difficult. One thing I actually did when I first got to Washington is I connected with someone who works for the city of Lacey and she's in HR. And I was like, hey, would you like be willing to just look over my cover letter and resume? Because that's what she does. She looks through applications and tries to see if someone's a good fit. And she was like, yeah, I'd be happy to. And I sent her my information and she gave me some really great tips about like language using past or present tense where appropriate, saying like this isn't really necessary or maybe format this differently. So you could try doing that as well. I mean, I think there's resume services out there. I know they do exist through most colleges have a career center or something. But I will say, speaking from personal experience, sometimes the advice they give is like, is that the best thing to do? but yeah, I mean, having someone who works in that sort of field do like a once over on your application materials can be super beneficial because you could be including something that, may not really be as great as you think it is.
Marcia, didn't you say that there was a resource like that as part of AWG?
There is, and I'm not quite sure who does it, but I could look into it if you're interested.
It used to be, lady up
Let
in
me
New
see if I can
York.
find it. I think I can find the web page.
Mm-hmm.
I would be interested in that. Thank you.
Okay, so it looks like you can send an email with a PDF attached to the resume review committee and any questions you may have. And I will drop that information in the chat.
Oh, great.
Thank you.
So that is the email. So yeah, you can send a PDF version, and then I guess if you have any questions or anything, and a member of the committee will work to answer your questions and provide you with feedback. All right, any other questions?
Well, maybe a comment. I I sort of went through my job hunting phase in my 50s, which was not a really great time, but turned out I'd gone to graduate school to learn groundwater modeling. And just at the time I graduated, state of Colorado needed a groundwater modeler. And so I submitted a resume and got the job. And one of the reasons was, I was told later on, was because I was a US citizen, and it was working on a project that had a lot of classified information. And so, I don't know.
So you were
Um,
able,
Interesting.
What's that?
you were able to beat out the foreigners.
I was. And now I know who my competition was, and they were amazing. I would take classes from them if I could.
Yeah, sometimes you can get lucky and find a perfect position, but I think with geosciences, there's so many different things that you can do. And so
Mhm.
you're kind of like, what is it that I want to do? And like, how can I get
Yeah.
to that point? And I mean, I got really lucky with the temp position. I mean, don't get me wrong, it took me quite a while to get that position. Um, but I got it and I was like, I'll take my opportunity, 6 months. I will learn whatever I can, meet whoever I can. And I actually ended up getting a job from my unit supervisor's wife. So I was like, yes, I'm sure he gave me a glowing recommendation.
Yeah.
It seems to me that there's a lot of, luck and serendipity, and so a lot of what you've talked about is making sure you're out there and in a position to take advantage of whatever may happen to come your way.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
sometimes people
just
get lucky and never find anything, but I think most of the time, if people are really out there, sooner or later you'll find something. It may not be exactly what you were looking for, but in geology, you have to be kind of flexible.
yeah. And really every opportunity can be a stepping stone into something better. It really can, whether it's in the same organization or just knowing people. Just from my experience, moving around, I've lived in so many states. I was in 3 different states in my master's program alone, and it can be
Mm.
really tough. But just continuing to put yourself out there and to take advantage of anything around you and to market yourself in whatever place you're in. It really can pay off, but it's not something easy to do.
Yeah.
You have to be resilient for sure.
Mhm.
Early careers often involve a fair amount of moving around, which is awkward for someone like Marilyn who has a family.
Yeah.
Yeah. Elizabeth, I appreciate you sharing that because I'm 41 years old. And so I've had that question in my mind of, okay, how easy is it going to be for me to find a job against
Mhm.
all these younger people?
Yeah. But if you get your experience highlighted in the right ways, it'll make a big difference in what people
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, I think regardless of your age, opportunities are out there because, one thing you mentioned is you're struggling with is your lack of experience. And I may be younger than you, but I'm struggling with the same exact things as you. And that can be across the board. I mean, my struggle is that COVID happened and I just those opportunities were gone. And I also worked full time through college. I had bills to pay. I had to take care of stuff. I worked all through college. I didn't get to just say, oh, I want to go do this internship or something. I couldn't do that. And so, you are facing the same struggle that so many other people are, is that sometimes lack of experience is hard, but you go into it, you know, same level as me. So
Mhm.
regardless of, you know, your age, you 100% have the same odds for an opportunity as anyone else that you're going up against. And it really does take just someone to see that potential in you and take that opportunity.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, the first job I got was working in the uranium mining industry.
Ooh.
And it caught up with me and made me retire after I found out I had a tumor in my brain. And then there were two,
Oh dear.
Jeez.
Best.
but I'm all better now.
Good.
I did get an opportunity this summer with the USGS as a student contractor position to be looking at thin sections from the Stillwater complex in Montana.
Ooh.
Mhm.
And I like petrology, so I'm excited about that. Do you think something like that, it's not a whole lot of time. It'll be a part-time thing throughout the summer while I'm also still working my other job. Does that count as experience when employers
Well,
are going to get a job later?
Oh yeah.
USGS is a great place to get your foot in the door as an intern
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
because they
USGS
frequently
is very
will hire
reputable.
from, their intern lists or interns and get your foot in the door for a more permanent position,
Yeah, and
especially if they like what you're doing.
regardless of the amount of time, all experience is experience. I mean, this the field work I'm going to be, you know, helping out with at UW Tacoma is just I believe it's June to August, so it's just purely a summer. It's a summer research intensive. I think it's a course that she runs. I'm just volunteering to come and help, but it's only a few months. But those few months, that's experience regardless. You know,
Oh, yeah.
that's you're learning new techniques. That's
Yeah.
all experience that you can put on your resume and bring with you, and 100% something that looks great, especially
Yeah.
from USGS.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
In the last job I had, well, actually, the guy who trained me suggested it that I ask or offer going out to accompany me on my field work, gathering water level data in the state, which sometimes was physical enough, needed two people to manage the equipment, and sometimes just for company. And there were a lot of women, and it benefited them professionally. Some of them were just permit writers or people who had never been out in the field. And there was one lady that I was really trying to mentor, but she kind of defeated my impression of her by dissing some science that I considered real and true, like the moonwalks.
Oh dear.
Yeah. It's like, okay, you have a bachelor's degree in a scientific field. Don't diss science.
Yeah. Yeah, you
Yeah.
have to actually kind of be careful, I think, about, some expressing some of your opinions either way, especially early on, because, you never know who you're going to um make a bad impression on that way.
All
One way
right.
or the other.
And here I go and just say whatever I want to say on Facebook
Well,
politically.
yeah.
But then again, that would probably get me out of any jury that's coming up in Arizona soon. It's like,
All right.
here, let me highlight something I just posted.
That's a good point you made, though, that, I mean, sometimes in the field, I think people can become relaxed in vocalizing what they think about things, but it's good to remember that it's still a professional environment and
Yes.
to be guarded and professional at all times.
Right.
Mhm.
All right. Were there any other questions? All right. Well, thank you all for coming. And thank you, Savannah. You gave a great talk.
Yes.
Thank you,
Hit all
Savannah.
all the right points.
I
Thank
am
you. Appreciate it.
I'm going to stop the recording.